The coming four blood moons points to a world-shaking event that will happen between April 2014 and October 2015. I believe that the heavens are God's billboard, that He has been sending signals to planet Earth, and we just haven't been picking them up. This is God's signal to this terminal generation that something is big and it's going to happen soon, and that something is going to change world history forever.
The blood moon. A lunar eclipse. To the Greek conqueror Alexander the Great, it was an omen of blessing after his victory over the Persians. To the Greek leader Nicias of the city of Athens, it was a signal of his defeat at the hands of the Spartans. To Charlemagne, the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, a series of lunar and solar eclipses were a sign of his impending death. Events like these led the great bard William Shakespeare to observe,
"These late eclipses in the sun and moon portend no good to us."
Throughout history, eclipses of the sun and the moon have been taken as signs of something ominous. Today, there are some who say that God Himself has ordained an impending series of eclipses to warn us of something significant to come. 4 red moons, 1 black sun. According to prophecy writers like John Hagee, the combination of 4 red moons, 1 black sun has happened before, and each time it can be linked to significant events in the history of the people of Israel. So also, he says, we should soon expect something else significant to happen in 2014 or 2015. Could this possibly be true? Could the next series of 4 red moons, 1 black sun, be a sign that the end of all things is near?
There are Christians who have been predicting the end of the world for hundreds of years. You can find books written in the 1800s saying that the world is about to end. You can find books written in the 1900s saying that the world is about to end. You can find all sorts of different figures identified as the Antichrist. Adolf Hitler, Ronald Reagan, Mikhail Gorbachev, Pope John Paul II. It seems that Christians don't ever learn from these mistakes. And that's why John Hagee is able to get away with writing all these books.
Is the past occurrence of 4 red moons, 1 black sun, really tied to significant events in Jewish history? And do they signify for Jews a trail of tears, followed by a time of triumph? According to John Hagee and other prophecy authors, 3 prior instances can be identified. First, the red moons and black sun of the years 1493 and 94. These years were marked by the tragic expulsion of Jews from the Kingdom of Spain, followed by the triumph of the discovery of America, where Jews might later find a refuge. Second, the red moons and the black sun of the years 1949 and 1950. These were marked by the founding of the modern Jewish state of Israel and that nation's subsequent victory in a war for its very survival. Finally, the red moons and black sun of 1967 and 1968. These, we are told, aligned with the Six-Day War, when the state of Israel triumphed over its many enemies in a difficult battle of survival. Does this mean that red moons and black sun of 2014 and 15 will also see some significant event in Jewish history? Hagee is correct to say that a correspondence of blood moons with Jewish holidays is a rarity, but it is not as rare as he would have us believe. Lunar eclipses can only take place at the time of a full moon. Jewish holy days, meanwhile, are on a lunar calendar, which means they can only begin at the time of a full moon. Astronomer Danny Faulkner tells us that of the 230 lunar eclipses that took place in the 20th century, 1/6 took place on Jewish festival dates. The coincidence of a blood moon and a Jewish feast day is no miracle. But isn't it more unusual to have 4 blood moons so close together on Jewish holidays combined with a solar eclipse? Yes, it is, but it is not as unusual as Hagee would have us believe.
Hagee completely ignores all the tetrads that occurred before 1492 AD. And that is a sign, but it's a sign that the only way he can make his case is by limiting the amount of information he gives to his audience. Now let's look at the dates of these prior tetrads that Hagee ignores. 162 to 163 AD, 795 to 796 AD, 842 to 843 AD, and 860 to 861 AD. Now if we look at those 4 periods in history, we find that the Jews of that era were living in relative peace. There were no events of significance associated with them of the type that Hagee was looking for.
How significant are the events associated with these later red moons and black suns? We begin with the events tied to the red moons and the black sun of the years 1493 and 94. In what way can these eclipses be connected to the events concerning the Jewish people? Are they connected, as Hagee says, to the expulsion of Jews from Spain and the subsequent founding of America as a refuge for and ally of the Jews? Although the expulsion from Spain was undoubtedly a significant historical event, it only affected a portion of Jews alive at the time. Jews of the age lived all over Europe, not in Spain alone. In addition, the key event at this time, the Royal Edict, which expelled the Jews from Spain, was issued on March 31st, 1492, over a year before the first of the 4 blood moons. In his teachings, Hagee extends the connection between the blood moons and the Jewish people by way of the voyage of Christopher Columbus. According to Hagee, Columbus himself was of Jewish descent, and his finding of America gave Jews both a place of refuge and a future ally. But while the Jewishness of Columbus is a theory that is held by some respected historians, the notion that Columbus discovered America in the sense of the United States is untrue. None of Columbus's 4 voyages had him setting foot on the land now called the United States of America. It was not until 1565 and the founding of St. Augustine, Florida, that any European is known for certain to have set foot in what is now called the United States. The earliest Jew to set foot in America, Elias Lagarde, did not arrive until 1621, when English settlers arrived in Virginia. In fact, Columbus cannot even lay claim to being the first European to visit any part of the American continents. That honor belongs to Leif Erikson, a Viking explorer, who arrived somewhere along the North Atlantic coast 300 years before the time of Columbus and the 4 blood moons of 1493 and 4. A final consideration is that the expulsion of Jews from Spain in the 1490s is not unique. In 1182 AD, Jews were expelled from France by King Philip Augustus. In 1622 AD, Jews were expelled from Switzerland by the Swiss Parliament. Altogether, Jews were expelled no less than a dozen times from European nations between the years 1100 and 1500 AD. It is hard to explain why the expulsion from Spain would be regarded as any more meaningful, or why, if Hagee was right, the heavens would have been silent concerning these other expulsions. We now consider events tied to the red moons and the black sun of the years 1949 and 50. The difficulties this time are obvious. Hagee connects the events of these eclipses to the founding of Israel, which occurred in 1948. But he does not name any significant event that occurred during the span of the time associated with the eclipses. In fact, Israel's war for independence ended on March 10, 1949, 1 month before the first red moon. Hagee has been telling us that God himself ordained these eclipses as signals. But surely, if this were God's intention, he would have been able to achieve a match and not miss the events in question by even the slimmest margin.
Now, if these eclipses are really a sign as Hagee claims, how is it that God has missed these events by a year or more with these eclipses? Close may count in horseshoes, but there's nothing about it counting in biblical prophecy.
Now consider the final set of events Hagee ties to the red moons and the black sun in the years 1967 and 8. These eclipses Hagee connects to the Great Six-Day War, in which the State of Israel met 3 of its Arab opponents, Egypt, Syria, and Jordan, all in battle. True to its name, the war was fought between June 5th and the 10th, 1967, a stunning victory for Israel against all seeming odds. It is also arguably a success against all odds for Hagee, as this key event, unlike the others we have seen, does occur within the time frame of the eclipses. But Hagee's success is undermined by the fact that many significant events in Jewish history, including many that affected larger number of Jewish people, were not accompanied by a series of 4 red moons and 1 black sun. If any event could be regarded as significant in Jewish history, it would be the Holocaust. 6 million Jews were brutally and wantonly murdered by the infamous Nazi regime. Yet not 1 year of that tragic period between 1933 and 1945 was marked by a series of 4 red moons and 1 black sun. Another significant event was the occurrence of pogroms, or violent attacks on Jews in Russia during the 19th century. These attacks sparked worldwide outrage, but by Hagee's reckoning, the heavens were strangely silent about them. Yet other events of great significance to the Jewish people went unmarked by this phenomena. According to the Jewish historian Josephus, the destruction of the Jewish temple in 70 AD was marked by certain heavenly signs, but not red moons and a black sun. The final destruction of Jewish resistance by the Emperor Hadrian in AD 135, in response to the Bar Kokhba rebellion, also passed by the heavens unobserved.
Now, if what Hagee is saying here is correct, that means that the expulsion of the Jews from Spain was of more importance in God's eyes and more deserving of a sign than the Holocaust, the Russian pogroms of the 19th century, or even the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. I don't think that reflects well on what Hagee supposes to be God's priorities.